Hey, it's me, and today we're playing Kerbal Space Program, a wonderful space flight simulator game where you build rockets that go to space. Usually. Sometimes. Maybe. Anyways, today we're going to get into orbit, hopefully, with only this solid rocket booster featured here, the Flea. It's the first booster in the game, and consequently, arguably one of the worst. So here is Mark 1 with hopefully enough fleas to get into orbit. However, it doesn't perform. Bad design, no go to space. Bad problem, parts fall off in wrong order. I can talk, I promise. Anyways, doesn't work too well. As you can see, it flops, it flips, and it rapidly disassembles in an unplanned way, an uncontrolled way. So, you can see it's not going to go to space ever. So, to solve this problem, I guess, I'm going to make a new version, the Mark II. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to replace that big bulky standard command pod at the top with a external command seat. Basically, instead of sending my Kerbal to space in a big metal box, I'll send him into space on a lawn chair, because every ounce counts in the fight against gravity. So, I'm sure Jeb will be incredibly happy by this change. Next thing I'm going to do is when I'm building my rocket, instead of following the standard thick at bottom, thin at top building of rocket, I'm instead going to build it thick at top, thin at bottom. What this is going to do is, instead of having all of the force come from the bottom and propagate up through the rocket, and then, as you saw with the Mark 1, it accordions, I'm going to have all the force be from the bottom and the top and the middle of the rocket. And in theory, this will lower the forces on the whole structure and cause the rocket to stay put until I want it to fall apart. Yeah. Staging. Anyways, speaking of staging, that's what I'm doing now. And if you've noticed, it going a lot faster now because the staging took a while to do, because lots of staging is hard when you have bad frame rate. Anyways, I realized that I made a critical error. I forgot to add a decoupler, so Jeb will stay stuck to the fairing, which will not make for good re-entry conditions. So I have to add this in now. Then Kerbal Space Program decided you're not allowed to reattach your chair to this new thing. So, after trying a radial decoupler, I decided, okay, I'm going to make a new chair. And I guess now I might as well say what's in the chair. There's a heat shield to prevent Jeb from burning up when he hits the atmosphere. There's a SAS wheel to prevent the chair from flipping, and a battery to power the SAS wheel, as well as the chair, which will allow Jeb to fly. And after moving the chair separates from fairing up to the top of the staging stack, I am going to launch. Except I have to add these launch clamps so that it doesn't fall over on the launch pad. Alright, here we go. It's flying pretty good, except one thing to note is the nav ball seems to think that the rocket's pointed at the horizon. Well, it's really pointed straight up, so that's something I'll have to fix. Also, it's not going nearly as high as it should because of large aerodynamic forces, so I'll do whatever I can to lower the aerodynamic drag. And, oh yes, when the second stage separates, the boosters decide instead of going away from the rocket, they're going to go towards the rocket. That obviously is not good. So, first thing I'm doing here is fixing the chair by taking it off and then replacing it rotated. Then I'm rebuilding the fairing, and I'm making the fairing more pointy because that might be more aerodynamically efficient. Or not, I don't know. Then the next thing I'm doing is I'm adding some aerodynamic caps to those boosters in the middle that I didn't have earlier. This is going to help a lot. Also, I'm going to replace some of the caps around the outer rim that are on the boosters that fall off first with the advanced nose cone type B. This has incredible efficiency when it's pointed towards another booster. although it does have more weight. So the theory is I put these on the parts that fall off first, so they provide good efficiency when we're in the atmosphere, and then when there's no more atmosphere, they are gone, so they don't provide extra weight. However, you'll notice that the ship was rotating as it was launched, and I decided, hey, I want to do a gravity turn. I'm going to take these off and just put on normal nose cones. So I did that, and it fixed the issue. The next thing I need to do is I need to fix the issue where the boosters hit the rocket. So I moved the decouplers up, and then I moved the boosters down. And the theory is that the decoupling force will be above the booster's center of mass, and they'll kick outwards, tilt away from the ship. Aerodynamic forces will cause them to fall away cleanly, and it won't blow up. Another thing to note is you can already see the we're going fast shockwaves, so the extra aerodynamic that I put on the inner boosters is helping a lot. And there we go. Stage 2 decoupled pretty nicely. The boosters still went inwards, but they did it below the ship, so that's good, I guess. And here we are, Stage 3 separation. And, oh, what? Jib fell out. I think what happened is the staging was wrong. Jeb's chair decoupler triggered too soon. Then Jeb whacked into the fairing, fell out of his chair, fell through the fairing, and then entered freefall. Luckily, he had a parachute, so he was fine. So, here we go, number 2. For this flight, I'd like to draw your attention to the lower left-hand corner. You'll see that our apoapsis is at 550 kilometers before the fairing blows and we flip. So we need to get to 70 kilometers before we can circularize. And on the 2 stages after that, you may have noticed that we had each had 1,000 meters per second, so we could have got into orbit. So what that means is if we add a couple more boosters, we can probably get to orbit. Another thing that I should have talked about when it was on screen, noticed I zoomed in. If you looked carefully, you could see Jib's head was not behind the heat shield. I forgot words for a second there. Heat shield. So when we re-enter, Jeb's probably going to get hurt. So I'm just moving the chair so that he'll be better covered, because the chair, Kerbal's head stick out above the chair, much like how normal chairs work. I didn't consider that when designing. So now I'm just adding another layer of boosters. This will hopefully take us high enough that we can then get into a nice stable orbit. And one thing to note here is that this last pair, ring of boosters that I'm trying to put on here, it doesn't want to go on properly. And this is because, for whatever reason, Kerbal Space Program prefers to put things on radially than onto an actual node, which is quite annoying when you're trying to do something like this, because it just defaults to going radially on, and to put it on a node you have to, it's weird, you don't just mouse over the node, you mouse below the node, so it just wants to go on radially. Basically, these are a pain to put on. It took me probably 7 minutes just to do that. Okay. Yeah, it was pretty painful at the time. And, of course, restrut them together so it doesn't blow up. And now we can launch. So, I'm turning on Auto SAS immediately. Just follow prograde, so it'll just keep pointing straight up throughout the whole ascent. And, oh yes, this happened. Staging was wrong again, so after I separated stage 1, stage 2, not all of the stage 1 fell off, only most of them, so stage 2 fired into it, heated up, caused an explosion. It was very bad. Here we go, I fixed that. Anyways, as I was saying, we're going to go straight up. I'm just hold going straight up because we have enough delta V in this to go straight up and be high enough that we can then circularize, which we have now got high enough now. I don't know if this is realistic, the plasma on ascent. Anyways, then we can use these next 2 stages to reach a stable orbit. I don't know where I was going with this. Oh yes, the reason that I'm not doing a gravity turn is because I'm lazy, and I just decided it'd be easier to add a couple more boosters than do an actual gravity turn. So, anyways, uh, here we go, getting into a stable orbit. The final booster. Will we have enough? Actually, I've kind of already. I can't do any of the drama because I already told you it would work. So there we go, stable orbit with only fleas. But wait, that's not all. Jeb is stuck in orbit. But I've got a couple of tricks up my sleeve. So, when you decouple using a decoupler, uh, the things get the two things that get decoupled, they get pushed away from each other. So we're going to use these to try to re-enter. So I'll just uh, keep time warping. I think I time warped past the periapsis, so I had to do it again till we reach periapsis. Get on our retrograde and um, realize that we're not anywhere near our periapsis, and then physical warp up to our periapsis. So here we go. Moment of truth. Will the decoupling work? Watching the periapsis gauge, and kablamo! It didn't work. But never fear, I've got another idea. We can get Jeb on EVA, and he can push the chair. It'll only need about 50 meters per second, as I verified with this maneuver node. So, I think we can do it. We get Jeb out on EVA, he uses his jetpack, and he pushes the chair on a collision course with the atmosphere, and oh wait! The chair just is gone. Well, that's awkward. Jeb, I think your mission is going to go a little longer than planned. But don't worry, we'll get you back next time. Right?